Good morning, scholars. Welcome back. So glad to have you here today. Today's learning goal is I can describe an illustration of a bullfrog and use pictures and details in animals of the freshwater habitat to describe the read aloud's key ideas. When we look at the map of the earth, it looks flat like a sheet of paper. But in all reality, the Earth actually is this sphere shape. It's not a flat shape, it's a sphere, which is a lot like a ball. So when we're looking at this globe, and I know you've seen them in the classroom when we were together, and they look a little bit different because this one has a lot less writing on it. But it's this blue area right here are actually like oceans and lakes. So when we look at this image right here, we can see North America, the continent of North America right here. And this pole that we talked about is an invisible pole. It doesn't really exist. It's just showing the axis that the Earth is spinning on. Right here is the United States of America. And these right here are the Great Lakes. Right here, the giant freshwater lakes. But this part right here, and we can see that it's mostly water. This is all water right here. But then when it rotates around, these are bodies of land. These green and brown areas, they're land where people actually live. And if it looks like this, there's probably mountain ranges, and here we can see other lakes. If you look closely, you can see some of the rivers that are around. Okay? All right. So this is all water again. Here's land. Water, land. This is North America, South America. It's going to rotate around here. Nice. Right here, we've talked a lot about Africa, which is this shape right here. In Europe, over here. Okay? All right. Now let's take a look. Let's see if we can remember about some of the habitats we've learned about in this series right here. We've learned about the Arctic tundra and different animals and plants that live on the Arctic tundra. We also learned about the Arctic Ocean. Here it is, the Arctic Ocean, the ice chunks that are sitting there. We talked about that the water is so cold. Ooh, there isn't a lot of things that live in the water up there, but there are some things. We learned about the walruses and the seals and the polar bears. Okay, and then we learned about the Sonoran Desert right here. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's also very warm. We learned about some plants and animals that live in the Sonoran Desert. That's pretty. There's a nice bird. Okay. Here we go. And then we continued, as we continued through our study, we studied the East African savanna right here with the zebras. They're cute. If you've ever seen Madagascar, this looks pretty familiar. Okay, and the giraffes and elephants and the different types of trees. Oh yeah, and the birds. Yep. Those look scary, don't they? I wouldn't want one of those in my backyard. Yep, the vultures. Okay, and as we progressed, then we learned about temperate deciduous forests right here. We learned about different types of animals and plants. There's so many more than what we can cover in our series here. We just learned a few examples of how those animals and plants live in that deciduous temperate forest. And then when we came down here, we learned about the rainforest. Yeah, there's lots of different things living in the rainforest. That monkey's so cute. I could do without the snake or the leopard in my backyard, though. Leafcutter ants and how important they are. And today, we're going to learn about a new habitat. So, this is a freshwater habitat. Freshwater does not have very much salt in it. It's often the water that people can drink. A freshwater habitat is different from the water found in the Arctic Ocean, which is called saltwater habitat. The water that is found in oceans is salty. You're going to learn more about other saltwater habitats in the next lesson, but today you're going to learn about freshwater habitats. This illustration shows different kinds of freshwater habitats, such as rivers and streams, lakes and ponds. So right here, rivers and streams. They both have flowing water, but streams are much smaller usually. And then we have lakes and ponds, various types of ponds right here. So can you think of some examples of freshwater habitats that are near you? You're going to learn about some plants and animals that live in and around freshwater habitats. So listen for the different kinds of plants and animals that are in freshwater habitats. Hello again. Glad you could join me. I thought that we needed a real change, so I've come off dry land to a place where it's wet all the time. A lake. A lake is an area of water that is surrounded by land. So let's take a look at that right here. I think we can use this map. If you look, I'm going to zoom it in right here. These lakes are completely surrounded by land. Right? There's land everywhere you look right there. There is a lot of water in the world. In fact, water covers most of the Earth's surface, but only a tiny part of the world's water is fresh water, the kind of water you and I can drink because it has very little salt in it. So again, when we're looking at this Earth, all of this is water, but you can't drink any of that because the salt would be very bad for you. Fresh water is found in streams, rivers, lakes, and ponds. The water in these streams, rivers, lakes, and ponds come from rain and from melting ice and snow. Isn't it amazing to think that the water from drinking fountain at school or from the faucets in your house all come from rain? Here I am at the water's edge, or the waterside, to explore this lake and the plants and animals that call this freshwater habitat home. Freshwater habitats have many kinds of fish, birds, insects, and other animals. Standing here, I can see an enormous, or very big, leaf in the water. Let me climb onto it so we can get a closer look. This is a water lily leaf. Right here. He's standing on it. There's a water lily right there. Freshwater habitats have many kinds of fish, birds, and insects, and other animals. A water lily is a plant that lives in the water near the edge of the ponds and lakes. Plants are important in freshwater habitats because they make oxygen for animals to breathe. Plants are also food for animals to eat, and they provide shelter to protect animals from their predators. So remember, a predator is an animal that hunts other animals. The leaves of the water lily are very large, round, and green. They float on the surface of the water. If they float on the surface of the water, that means they stay on top of the water. They don't sink. The water lily is well adapted for living in this habitat. Like the kapok trees in the rainforest, The lily's large leaves let it get as much sunlight as it needs for food and energy. Lilies are also food for many animals. Believe it or not, animals like deer, porcupines, beavers, and turtles all eat the leaves, whereas ducks and geese like to eat the roots. Some animals, like fish and frogs, use the lily leaves as hiding places, and flowers bring bees and other insects. I'm going to float around the edge of the lake on this water lily leaf, but I'm going to leave soon because this pesky turtle will not leave my leaf alone. I've pushed out from the edge of the lake a little, and already I can see another kind of plant that lives here. It's called a cattail. It gets its name from the unusual way it looks. Thankfully for me, it doesn't have much to do with real cats. Cattails have long, thin stems with foot-long, furry flower spikes at the top that turn from green in the early summer to brown in the fall. The flower spike feels soft and furry and looks a little like a cat's tail, but I think it looks more like a hot dog. Does this cattail look like a hot dog to you? The plants can reach up to 9 feet in height, which lets them get as much sunlight as they need. As with water lilies, some animals use cattails for food and shelter. The muskrats and the geese like to eat the roots of the cattail, and the juicy green shoots are a favorite of moose and elk. So right here, the moose, right here, and the elk. Many kinds of birds make their homes among the cattails. It's very hard to see anything in there because cattails grow so thickly. It's a good place for birds to build their nests and to lay and hatch their eggs. Predators like snakes and frogs also live among the cattails and search for animals like birds and insects for food. I think I'm going to move on now. As you know, I'm not very good with snakes. So the moose and the elk are part of the deer family. Come with me beneath the water and let's take a look at what's under here. Here are some nice looking rainbow trout. Fish can only live in water, and they breathe underwater using gills on the side of their bodies. Gills take in oxygen from water around them. Fish have strong tails that they use for swimming and fins that they use for steering and balancing. A rainbow trout is a carnivore. Remember, a carnivore is an animal that eats other animals. It eats other water animals like insects, other fish, and sometimes shellfish. It even eats some small land animals like mice if it gets the chance. So I'm sure it wouldn't mind a nibble of rat. Rainbow trout like to live in rivers, but some prefer the deeper water of big lakes. What do you see in this image? I'm sure you've seen his eyes. And his strange coloring is kind of green and brown and yellow. It looks kind of shiny, like it might be slimy if we were to touch it. I enjoyed exploring beneath the surface of the water, and now I'm going to rest on a lily pad again. While I'm drying off a bit, let me show you a kind of frog called a bullfrog that I can see sitting on the water's edge. Frogs are amphibious, which means they live both in water and on land. Bullfrogs are the largest kind of frogs found in North America, and they can grow more than a half a foot long and weigh more than a pound. That's a really big frog. The bullfrog gets its name from the loud cow-like noise it makes. Have you ever heard that kind of noise before? I bet birds and turtles would be pretty surprised to know that a frog can make such a loud sound. Pretty neat, huh? This bullfrog is resting now, but it will come out to hunt when it gets dark. Bullfrogs eat a lot of different kinds of food. They are carnivores, so they eat small fish, snakes, birds, and insects, like this dragonfly that's buzzing around my head. This is an adult dragonfly. Adult means grown up. Wow, that dragonfly was cool looking. Okay, adult dragonflies are flying insects with long bodies and wings. Dragonflies live around the lakes, streams, and other freshwater habitats because they lay their eggs in water. Adult dragonflies eat other insects like mosquitoes, flies, and bees. The dragonfly uses its long wings to hover or stay in one place while it's flying around in the air where it catches its food. It has to be careful because the bullfrog isn't the only one that likes to eat dragonflies. Birds and turtles like to eat them too. The water is getting a little rough out here. Ah, that's why. Here come some birds that like to eat insects. These are a kind of duck called mallards. Ducks are birds that can live both in and out of the water, but it's water where they spend most of their time. Like all birds, ducks, like these mallards, are covered in feathers. Did you know that ducks' feathers are waterproof? When something is waterproof, it keeps out the water. Ducks rub special oil from their tails all over their feathers because oil and water don't mix. Water drips right off the ducks without getting their feathers wet. Ducks float on the surface of the water and have large webbed feet to help them paddle. They dip their heads under the water and they use their beaks, which are called bills, to search for food at the bottom of the lake. Here the word bills refers to the duck's beak. The word bills can also refer to paper money. Mallards eat grasses and seeds from plants and small animals like insects, worms, snails, frogs, and small fish. Well, we've had a good look around the freshwater habitat, but I have to get off this lily leaf before these ducks knock me off. Here's another kind of water habitat. And we're going to have... there's another kind of water habitat, and we're going to have to look at it next time. I hope you'll join me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to start my long trip back to shore. What are some examples of freshwater habitats? I'm going to show you the picture up here. This will help remind us, I think. Here they are. They were rivers, streams, lakes, and ponds. Good deal. Is most of the Earth's water freshwater or saltwater? I'm going to remind you, we're going to take a look at this. Look at all this salt water. It's a lot of salt water. When you look, there's a lot less there's a lot less fresh water here than there is salt water. So the world is mostly salt water. What are some plants that live in the freshwater habitats? Well, some of them that we specifically talked about were the water lily right here. That's a water lily. And down here, we learned about, cattails, right? What animals live in a freshwater habitats? There's so many of them. We learned about the fish, including the rainbow trout, birds, including ducks, insects that include dragonflies, bees, mosquitoes, flies, frogs, including the bullfrog, the deer, the porcupine, beavers, turtles, muskrats, geese, and even moose. A lot of different things going on there. How are dragonflies adapted to live in the freshwater habitats? Here he is. Yeah, they lay their eggs in the water. The insects that live in freshwater habitats, like mosquitoes and flies and even bees. So dragonflies, we want to leave them alone because I'm not a big fan of mosquitoes, and I'd like him to eat them all up for me. What carnivores did you learn about today that live in freshwater habitats? I hope you said the rainbow trout and the bullfrog. What is the omnivore that you learned about today? Remember the mallard ducks? Yeah, they are omnivores. What is a nocturnal animal that lives in the freshwater habitats? I didn't really talk about it, but the bullfrog, he's a nocturnal animal right here. He likes to come out at night and look for his food. In the read aloud today, you heard the leaves of the water lily are very large, round, and green, and they float on the surface of the water. Say the word float. If things float on water, that means they stay on top of the water and they do not sink. In summer, I like to float in the pool. I'm going to describe a situation. If it's an example of something that does float, you're going to say, that floats. If it's an example of something that does not float, you're going to say, that does not float. The leaf fell from the tree and landed on the surface of the water. I hope you said, the leaf floats. Harry threw a rock and it sank to the bottom of the pond. I hope you said, the rock does not float. The boat rocked gently back and forth on top of the waves. I hope you said, the boat floats. The dolphin dove deep into the ocean. I hope you said, the dolphin does not float. There are many pennies under the water at the bottom of the water fountain. I hope you said, the pennies do not float. Have you ever heard the saying, a fish out of water? Go ahead and say, a fish out of water. What would happen to a fish that was out of water? The fish would not be in its usual environment or place. It would be very uncomfortable, and it would be difficult for the fish to survive very long without water. People would survive if they weren't in their usual place, but they just might feel a little uncomfortable or strange. So how strange would it feel if you were the only person who forgot to wear shoes to school one day? Right, you would feel like a fish out of water. What if you started to go to a new school and didn't know anyone else in your class? Then you might feel like a fish out of water. How about right now when you're watching me on videos instead of being in school with us? Then you might feel a little like a fish out of water right now. Well, that's it for today. That's Animals and Habitats, Lesson 7. Our learning goal for today was, I can describe an illustration of a bullfrog and use pictures and details in Animals of the Freshwater Habitat to describe the read aloud's key ideas. So go ahead and share what you learned with a mom or dad or a family member or somebody that's close to you today. Until tomorrow, have a great day.